This is the Briggs & Stratton 18 horse Vanguard. The earlier version of the machine, the 2004 version, the version that's in all the videos on YouTube, that ran on a 16 horsepower Briggs Vanguard key start. I like these engines, they work great. I got a pretty good deal on this one brand new for $1,200. The pump is the Keen P350 housing with the largest impeller, the impeller that measures 6 inches across. The largest impeller you can put in this housing. And that's a really good match for this engine. And the 16 horse. I wouldn't go lower than the 16 horsepower. So, 18 horsepower is what I'm going to recommend, although I will tell you this, the 18 horsepower is quite a bit heavier than the 16 horsepower. 4 sticks of Schedule 40 4-inch PVC pipe. I like the gray electrical conduit. You can use the white stuff, it's cheaper. Make sure whatever you get has the bell connectors at one end, because we use those bell connectors to attach the pipe. What I do is I cut slots 180 degrees apart and put a hose clamp on there. The self-supporting coupler, it's great. This is the 4-inch TigerFlex. Any of the smooth inside, smooth outside suction hoses will work fine for this application. This is a silicone intercooler coupler. It's 4.5 inch. You can get the Ferncos if you want to go cheap. I like the silicone because it's real easy to get it apart and it grabs really nicely. So I've used that for years. That piece is 20 years old and it's still in great shape. This is the Y connector. If you're using one pump. If you're not using one pump, then you don't need a Y connector. And you can just have 2 smaller pumps, one going to each nozzle. So the nozzles are a balanced set, which is important if you're going to use the Y connector, like I have it here. So notice I have a pressure gauge at the Y connector, because there's a minimum amount of pressure that we want to run this machine on. And that minimum pressure is 40 psi. So we want to see 40 psi on that gauge minimum on the back side of the Venturis. That's after pushing the full volume that it takes to run the Venturis in a choked condition. We still want to have 40 psi left over. That's important. These are 1-inch hoses that go out to this, which I like to call this a stream emitter. Anyway, it could be a blaster nozzle, or it could be this, this elbow piece. Anything we want. And this is the water that runs down to the nozzle and carries the gravel with it. Here's a smaller one that is also hooked to the 1-inch hose. So both those connections are 1 inch on that manifold that's on the back side of the Y connector. This is the tripod that I built back in, 1998. So it's built of 1 inch, 1/8 inch steel. These are ground rods. These are 6-foot ground rods, I believe. And these bolts take a 6mm Allen. I just use those because that's what we used to use at Panasonic. Obviously it doesn't have to be that size. You drill a hole that accepts the bolt, and then you assemble the nut and the bolt, and then you hold it down in the hole and you very carefully tack weld it on each side, and then you take your finger off and you weld it the rest of the way carefully, and as soon as you're done welding, then you loosen the screw And there you have it, the adjuster. There's no reason to have two on here. I just wanted to make it heavy duty, and I put two of the bolts on each one, so I'd have extra bolts. This is just regular rope, and if you watch the videos, you see how the 4 pulleys are set up to lower this thing down. And what I do is I just walk. I walk the manifold forward one leg at a time in operation. So this is a piece of culvert with more of the ground rods, and this is 3/4 inch, and these are 1 inch, same size adjusters. And these are hose clamps. This is part of my ex-girlfriend's swimming pool, and that supports that. The jet discharges into it, so it's an expansion chamber and a slip joint. And then from there we would attach to the recovery system. You see the strap on there. The strap only needs to be there if you have the hose and the pipe connected. So there's normally a piece of Tiger Flex hose that attaches to that, and then we can pull that jet out 8 or 9 feet before we have to move this assembly and the trommel and everything else forward. For the output of the pump, we have this 3-inch hose which connects to the lay flat, and then the lay flat I have each length marked out, and that goes to the manifold. So you need 4 pulleys. Pulleys don't have to be super fancy sailboat pulleys. Decent pulley from the hardware store. Here's another look at that coupling. This particular coupling is made by Kuriyama, and I bought it 18 years ago. Anyway, yeah, it's in pretty good shape, isn't it? This is one of the bell connectors cut off the PVC pipe. See how it has it's been cut there and cut there, and then we have a hose clamp over it which you don't see, and then the standard 4-inch coupler goes right over that and smack it into place with a rubber hammer, and you're all set. So depending on how tight that goes together, should be fine. You should have to smack it with a hammer to get it apart. So the culvert is 8 inches ID, 9 inches OD. The hose length is about 32 inches. This pipe is about 8 feet long. I would say keep it at least 6 feet long. So this piece right here is another one of these adjusters. A 1-inch tube, and then we have a piece of ground rod in it. And the ground rod can extend out, and then we use the ground rod to use the support strap when we have the pipe ending here and the rest of it is hose. You have to support that hose because we want the whole system to have nice geometry the whole time. We want a nice transition from the pipe into the decompression tube. Very important.